I'd like to welcome Heidi Hornlein and Mark Davenport to the Splendid Life Show. Heidi and I are both members of an online Facebook group, and I was intrigued by what she shared in that group. Therefore, I invited Heidi and Mark today to share their story of creating a relationship beyond their wildest dream. So please give a hearty welcome to Heidi and Mark. Yay!
Hello, and thank you for receiving us.
This is great.
Yeah. I'd like to start with Heidi. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then after that, Mark can have a turn.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
I'm happy to. I am a transformational relationship wizard, and I work with people who have experienced relationships which were not satisfying and even maybe very problematic. And they might find that the only way out is to be alone. And so I really, by my own experience, which I have done all this experience for myself, am able now to connect these people with their inner self, with their deepest desires, and help them to step into their possibility and to see how to create a new relationship, or be able in their old relationship to really transform it into a completely new way beyond their wildest dreams. And I have the tools to give them to do this transformation. I have done coaches training for transformational coaching, various degrees. I'm a counselor, and so I really feel happy to, then it's my practical result here. Mark, who I called in after having done the course Carling and the One and the training for coaches. So I really am happy to share that with you all.
All right, great. Thank you. So calling in the one. Mark, your turn, Mark.
Me. You bet.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm Mark, and I have a background in teaching and in counseling, and I help people who are going through painful, emotional times in their lives to change their lives, change their life, their thinking, and their behaving, so that they can once again find satisfying circumstances, satisfying relationships. I help them see where they went wrong, not wrong, that's the wrong word, how they got into the circumstances that they did find themselves, and what needs to be changed, and how to change that so that they can have a way of engaging with their life and with the people in their life beyond their wildest dreams. Yes.
Yeah. Wow, that's good. So, you are both now living in Italy, is that it?
That's right.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what was your life like before you met each other? So, who wants to go first? Heidi. Okay.
Both of us were alone. I was alone in Italy. After 3 long-term relationships, I had sort of decided I don't want that anymore. Finally, after the second relationship where I was still financially dependent, and where to come out of it was really, really, really difficult, because you don't have anything to live on. So I after the third one, then I thought, now it's finished. I don't want to go into a relationship anymore. But I had before developed a cancer, and I thought there must be something which has to do with me. Why do I choose people with whom in the relationship I feel unfulfilled, I feel unhappy, and I even, work against myself by getting a cancer? This is really self-destructive. So I thought there must be something with me, and I might need to change something. And that's when I found, for instance, Claudio Naranjo and the Enneagram, and I studied the Enneagram, and I understood that my Enneatype really likes to suffer, And,
to suffer? Okay. All right.
And a very important thing was that this Enneatype stays much too long in relationships which just don't do for them. And I did it the first time 12 years, the second time 8 years, and the other time 10 years. You know, it was after the first year I knew I shouldn't be there. And then I finally found Feminine Power and Calling in the One, and I did all the courses, and I did all the coaches trainings, and that was the moment of really change. And then my little voice which said, I want not to be alone, I want to be in a relationship, you know, I could listen to it, and now I could be confident to find the one. And here it is.
I'm happy to be the one. I am very happy to be the one. Yes. And, you know, I have, in some respects, a similar story. She's only got 2 marriages behind her. I have 3. So there. Okay. I once said, you know, if you want, you know, advice about marriages, don't ask me. You want advice about divorces? I've got something to say. But, you know, I have just 3 10-year marriages behind me throughout my adult life. And in between, there were other relationships of more or less importance. But they had some really common themes throughout. And that was, they started great, lots of promise, thought I'd learned from previous relationships what not to do. I did know what not to do, but I never learned what to do, you know? And so after a while, these romances faded. You know, we started being quiet with each other. We started not talking about things. You know, we had roles that we played in the relationship, and we maintained those roles. And we did those everyday kinds of things that were expected of us. And we socialized, and we smiled at our neighbors. And but it became hollow and empty. And all of these 3 wives eventually left me. And I was, you know, confused. I couldn't imagine what had gone wrong. It seemed like it came out of the blue. I'd gotten used to living that way as normal, you know, and they got tired of it. You know, I was tired of it too, but I wasn't going to do anything. I was going to hang in there. Hang in there. That's what I do. And did. Correction. Yes. And so eventually I got to the point where I was old enough to legally retire, so to speak, and I decided I don't want any more of this. I'm going to live alone. And I headed off to a retirement community in Florida, where my biggest decisions were how to get to the beach early enough before all the good parking spaces were taken. You know? And it was just a life without any real problems, nothing I couldn't handle at all, with, you know, with relative simplicity. And then, you know, I watched my neighbors grow old, and every 2 weeks there'd be an announcement of a funeral in the clubhouse, you know, coming up. You know, and I realized that this is the end of the line for people who stay here. There's no way out but down, you know. And of course, I still really would like someone in bed with me at night, you know. I certainly, you know, the nice things were gone too, and I'd used that time, several years in Florida, to indulge in some soul searching, and I met people who were helpful. I met some really important spiritual people, some really important relationship people, some people who really understood the psychology of us and who understood the historical perspective that we were in. You know? And came to understand that this was not just happening to me, this was happening to all kinds of people. You know? And so, I don't know where to stop with this. I think I've answered that kind of first question you asked, but that's what it was like, you know. There's a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous that you don't have to ride the garbage truck all the way to the dump. So, you know, but I was, you know, headed for the dump, you know, and I wanted out. I really did. And so I was finally willing to try something different. And that's what happened. That's what happened. Yeah.
What was the something different? How did you, you know, end up in Italy?
Well, because she was there, and she wasn't going to live in the U.S. Thank you very much. She did not want to join me in my retirement haven.
I said, I don't want to live in the middle of old people. I don't feel old. I want to create something in my life.
But I don't know, maybe you want to go first and say how that changed. Or,
how the change was possible for me. I think I talked already about it. I was prepared by my trainings so that I knew at least, you know, by experience, how new relationships or better relationships would work. And I have done this whole transformation, this growing up in myself. So I was, you know, I still had fear that the next relationship could fall back into the old patterns. But at the other side, there was much confidence that it wouldn't happen. Because now, the first time in my life, I really knew how things work, how my patterns were, and how I could behave and think and believe differently. So I really decided I want to have a partner. And I said, until next Christmas, it was 2 years ago, 2 years, yeah, something, I want to have met my next partner. I set the intention, you know. And we met first, not in person, but on online, in the end of November. So this happened.
Yeah. He was ready, and I was ready, you know. And when we met online, we had no idea that we were going to get romantically involved with each other. We were just commenting, you know, on a mutual friend's postings, and it was an interesting comment, and we started talking to each other.
Yeah, because we didn't met on a dating site.
It wasn't a dating site, no. And so we actually got to know each other a bit before we even saw each other. And that's certainly not the usual way that relationships start. You know, at least with men, it's sight first, you know. And it wasn't the case at all. And so she had a way of being open and honest and direct that was absolutely new to me. And since I wasn't thinking about a romantic involvement, I could just be honest and open, direct back, you know. And if somebody got angry or stormed off, well, big deal, you know. But it was absolutely intriguing, you know, to enter into a relationship sort of through the back door that way, you know, instead of the usual formality and pomp and how you act, you know, when you're courting someone. What an old-fashioned word. Court someone.
It's a lovely word.
Yeah. You know, and so she, with her training, was able to stay open and authentic and honest, and it invited me in to do the same. And this was a safe container where we could just be honest with each other and not worry about the outcome. And so we got to know each other in a really rapid, couple of 3 months, you know, and I got on a plane and came over to meet her. You know? And you know, within 2 weeks of being together, you know, after one crisis, which was really telling, which really exposed to me, showed me some of the games that I'd been playing with myself for a long, long time, a manipulation that I habitually did in relationships. And she saw it, and she called me on it. And I had this, aha, oh, this huge experience. You know, she transmitted to me, you know, this vision that she had of how relationships should proceed directly and openly. And I got it. And I decided to stay. I was ready to stay. I had to go back home to Florida to fix up some things and put things in order. But a month later, we were back, and we've been together since. I was back, yeah. So, yeah.
Look, can you tell me more about this crisis that you had before you had this revelation?
Oh, do you mean still in Florida before I left, you mean? Or do you mean after I arrived here?
But I think when
That you just
yeah.
that whatever the crisis you mentioned that led you to making that decision to stay.
Oh, yes. Well, that was quite dramatic. I had a favorite American news show that I like to watch frequently. I grew up in the northern part of the country near Chicago, and so I like to tune in to Chicago news for all the grime and crime and political corruption and all the juicy stories that come out of Chicago every day, you know. And I said, I think you'd like to watch this. I think you'd find this really interesting.
Yeah, after 2 weeks that you haven't watched anything.
I hadn't watched it for 2 weeks. I needed to catch up. And she said, why would I want to watch the news from Chicago? Just as simple and straightforward as that. Ask me that. And I had no answer, you know. I realized that I was trying to manipulate her into doing what I wanted without really asking her if she had any interest. I just assumed that she would. You know, I tried to put her in a position where she couldn't say no. And, bah.
And the true thing was, he didn't want, it was late in the night, this transmission for our time zone here, he didn't want me to go earlier to bed than him. And so he tried to tell me that I would like Chicago news. And you know, it was a big challenge also for me, because in my former life I would have said, yeah, okay, if he really wants to listen to it, so I will stay up and listen with him. It's not a big deal. I can do that for him. And then I said, no, I don't want to listen to that, you know. And I said, no, I don't want to. And later we were able to talk about this way how we try to manipulate each other, giving to the other the decision for our own desires, you know. Because he wanted to see the news, not me, but he tried to talk me into that it was my desire, you know. And then you feel like, it doesn't feel well. Shall I say no? Shall I not? But if I say no, what will he think of me? And so on. I discovered it before, but with this, he discovered that this is the normal way how normally we behave in relationships, and we don't see how much we put the other person in prison and in a very awkward situation. Or they have to rebel, and this is not nice, or they have to say, okay, I do it, and this is not nice at all, you know. So,
yeah, well, it seems like a small little incident, but it was very revealing, you know. And I realized, you know, that there's some things in my life that I've been doing wrong forever. I just, you know, not wrong, but what? I did these things unconsciously, You know, and this is something I had learned as a child. You know, to try to rope other people in, to not being able to say no to what I wanted. You know? And as a child, it was important. You know, that's how I understood the world. You know, and that's how I could be part of things and have other people with me. But that's childish. You know, that's not adult life.
And the good thing, the funny thing was when he went back home for the month, he found out that other people do it too. His friend does the same thing with his wife, and the other one does it too, and the wife does it with the husband. It was a sort of revelation.
It's a way of putting responsibility on the other person, you know, for things that one should take responsibility for oneself. Just being clear and straight. Yeah.
This was great.
It was. It was. And that was just the beginning. That was just the beginning of so much.
This is like part of the difference, right, between all your previous relationships and the one you're having now, right?
Absolutely.
So what are the other differences that you had, you know, between the relationship you're having now and your past relationships? Can you describe those?
I think the main thing is we did it very early when we came together. We did a firm commitment that our relationship should be in service of our personal growth, his and mine, and of the growth of the relationship. And that we wouldn't say we will stay all the time together for whatever cost, but when, you know, when these goals are not served anymore, there is the possibility that we will separate. So we don't keep ourselves in prison, or the other person, you know, now for all my life you will stay with you, or some you have to stay with me. It's not, we hope, you know, that we do that, but it is not, how to say,
till death do we part.
Yeah, it's not,
not
this
necessarily.
one. We are committed to be very clear, very enhancing each other. How do you say?
To help each other grow and develop.
Yeah. And to be take responsibility for our own emotions. So when you say, before you said you make me angry, you know, this isn't there anymore.
No.
I get angry for some reason, but it's not because he makes me angry, you know. And when there's still things appear, then we will talk, no?
And talk and talk and talk and talk.
And talk,
as long as we need.
As long as we need. But normally we don't need so long.
No.
The first half year, I think it was the most difficult one, because we had to work through all these things, and now it goes so quickly, and we sometimes really burst in laughter when we begin to enter in a situation which before was dramatic.
That's really something. There's so much less drama in our life now, you know? Histrionics and so forth. Though it's true, I can have an explosive temper sometimes, you know, and she doesn't take that personally, you know? She doesn't feed back into that. If I get to a point of frustration, I know now that I feel ashamed of something. There's something going on. I'm supposed to know this. I'm supposed to be able to handle this situation, and I feel ashamed because I can't. And why do you make me do that? You know? Gosh, I almost forgot where I was going there. But the focus goes back onto myself. She doesn't feed into it, and I have my own emotions to examine and deal with. And, you know, it doesn't take long. Like she says, we often burst out laughing in the middle of this business because we recognize the dynamic. And, and then my shame goes away, and I can be just human and open and vulnerable. And of course I don't know everything, you know?
Yeah, the thing is, what is really important, that we don't ask to the other to be something else as he, she is. We are free to express ourselves as we are. We don't have to try to please the other person, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We just are. And the other, sometimes he doesn't accept it, and then he tells me, and I say, okay. You know, but it's not anymore, he doesn't love me because he hasn't done this, he hasn't done that. It just doesn't occur anymore as a thought. We don't interpret anymore words or acts of the other person. But when we have a suspicion that there is something not, we ask, how do you mean that? How often have I asked you, how do you mean that? You know? What does it mean?
Exactly.
And so often I found out that it was completely a different thing than I thought that it meant, you know. So you really give up interpretation and think that what you think the situation means would be the right thing. It normally not. So I think these are the main tools we are using
every day.
Every day.
And you know, we do have some language communication problems too. You know, we both know Italian here in Italy, which is helpful, but I don't know any German to speak of. And she, as you can hear, does quite well with English, but still there are times when I just don't understand what she's saying. And it leads to strange and sometimes exasperating abysses of miscommunication.
But there's the willingness to not take it heavily, or how do you say? To just inquire until we have understood what the other means, and not get why don't you understand that?
Understand what? So I don't know. You know, and the really nice thing is that our life is so light and joyous, even though we work harder than we ever have. I am very officially unretired, you know. My life is busier than it was since my children were little, you know. And but there's energy for that. There's curiosity. There's adventure. There's courage. There's confidence. You know. And there's. I can go into situations that would have left me biting my nails before. She's the Enneagram 4. I'm Enneagram 6, which means I live in fear of everything. And you know, I'm developing a kind of courage, a kind of curiosity, a kind of adventurousness, realizing that there are very few situations that actually threaten me in any serious way. You know, there are no saber-toothed tigers outside the door.
No, they're extinct.
That's right, they are extinct.
Well, I wanted you to answer this. Is it possible to learn how to find the divine right partner, and how to learn to navigate a completely different relationship, like break old patterns? I mean, how easy is it? I mean, how would you start somebody on that path?
Ming, if I learned it, you can learn it. Anybody can learn it. Okay? You know? It takes, you know, some familiarity with the hard parts of life to even want to do this. But you don't have to, you know, go all the way down the drain before changing gears. You can turn your life around at any point. And if people could see really what few things have to really change, fundamentally change, in order for life to become immensely better, they'd be much more willing to just, you know, volunteer and jump up and down and say, me next, please, you know. But we're like fish swimming in the water, and don't ask a fish what water is, because that's just what's there all the time. You know? We have to experience some real bumps in order to want to change. And when that time is right, the teacher will appear. And the person can change.
Yeah.
And that's our business. You know, helping people who are in these difficult periods to change their life, change their thinking, to look back and get some idea of how their young person inside years ago decided the world is and what they have to do. And it's really about a dozen different possibilities that a child can choose from. You know, they don't have a wide repertoire of behavior, but just a few things. And then, unfortunately, they continue that pattern into their adult life, you know, when it's no longer appropriate, when they're not up against the same sort of consequences, when, you know, the things that made people laugh and chuckle and like them when they were children doesn't work anymore. People want some seriousness from you, some purpose, some dependability, you know. That's just one possible script. There's many others.
But what you named already is what we have learned as children is covertly still guiding us when we are in adult age. And so if we learn our own patterns, to recognize our own patterns, and then the identity in which we are living, you know, for instance, for me it was an identity, I'm not enough. So I had to study and learn and learn and learn and try to be enough, but nobody really could give me the appreciation I would have liked to have as a child. So we go on and on and on and on and on and on, you know. And for relationships, you know, that I'm not visible because I'm always trying to please the other person and don't see myself, you know. These identities, when you begin to see them, then you can transform them, and you can become really an adult person. You know, you don't need anymore to be on the mercy of a little child who freaks out with every fear or with every thing, you know, and no, we don't do that, and you know, you can decide to be in your adult part as soon as you have understood the difference of from what part you are speaking. And this is not so difficult, you know. It is like bing, when you understand it. It takes very, I see it with my clients, it takes really short, maybe 10 sessions, and their life is already boom.
Yeah, it's amazing, you know. Yeah. Psychotherapy can keep you on the couch for years, you know, but we can show people how to change in a really short time, dramatic changes in a very short time, and it transforms them. You know?
As it has transformed us. Yes, yeah. People, you know, one of my clients came to me, she knew me before, and she said, what you have, I want to have it too.
I want what you have.
Yeah, because she saw the transformation in me, you know, and she said, I wanted to, please help me.
You know. Is there any message to share particularly with men?
Oh my. Yes, you know, yeah, well, there definitely is. I mean, I could work with men or women, but I have a special relationship or identification, of course, with men, right, because of the way I was born, the way I grew up. My personality was formed in the 40s and 50s. You know, that was before women's liberation, where sexual roles were prescribed and pretty solid, pretty rigid, and it became my model of the way adult life should be. And meanwhile, the actual life of women was changing all around me. You know, they've had women, they. Women have had 50 years of progress, and men are just trying to catch up and figure out what the hell is going on, you know? Why doesn't it work like it used to work, you know? Without realizing that men, too, were really oppressed and constricted by the old role models. There were very few choices for men, as there were very few choices for women. Maybe a wider variety of occupations and so forth, but boy, men better work and work and work and work. And then eventually they can come home. But they were excluded from so much of the domestic life that women have taken for granted and become quite good at. And as women went out to explore public life more, men were just kind of scratching their head. Well, what's the problem? You know. So I definitely have a special spot in my heart for men who are hurting because of this. For men who have 7 times the homicide, I meant to say suicide rate. It might be that with homicide too, you know, of women, you know, who don't live as long as women, and we take it for granted that men won't live as long as women. There's no reason for that, you know.
Yeah.
Men get spent, you know, out there in the work world. The number of men who work over 49 hours a week is several times the number of hours that women work. I mean, the percentage of women that work that way. Some of these statistics are just, if they were reversed, there would be such an outcry, such a revolution against the treatment of women that it would be reversed, you know, overnight virtually. But men have come to expect this of themselves, and they end up empty and hollow and disillusioned, disappointed, and alone. You know, much more likely to end up living alone than women are. The women may not be married at the end of their life, but they're not alone. They're much less likely to live alone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is not only this; it is also that men are deprived because they don't have time normally. I mean, it happens now a little bit with women too. Because of the much work they are doing, they don't have time to go inside and to find out, you know, what life really is. They're so in their provider role still, and then when the woman says, "I don't need you anymore for keeping my life going," then they don't know what to do. I mean, they feel helpless. And I think what really the message is that there is a possibility for men to be liberated too. Masculine power in a completely different way than we thought. Before we thought this is masculine power. But, you know, the power is defined as the possibility to be the patron, you say patron? Patron of your life.
Master of your life.
The master of your life. And men normally are not, you know. They think work and then television maybe, and that's it. And they have difficulty to connect with modern women. I, in my past, had the problem when I met men, I was too much for them. I was too, you know, too free, too modern, too I don't know what, you know. He is the first person who has no, how to say, no fear, he's really my peer. And the others or try to oppress me, or then they went, something like this, you know. This is this general state of man, which really is changeable too, and they could live such a more satisfying life. They wouldn't need to go into alcohol, for instance, and smoking and all this stuff, what they do.
That brings up one other point I'd like to make about men. In contrast to women, ask a man how he feels, he'll tell you what he thinks, you know. And this men have become hardened to their feelings. They're supposed to be all action, masterful, go through anything, march up the hill and get shot if necessary, but show no fear, show no feelings, to the point where they've forgotten their bodies. They do not know how to feel. They cannot name feelings. They don't have vocabulary for that.
Yeah, and then they live with a woman who says, please tell me what you feel. And then they don't know what to say because they don't feel it. And then the woman says, you don't understand me because I'm feeling this and you don't tell me about your feelings. And it's already the relationship in complication,
Well, the man says, if you feel that way, well, just do X, Y, or Z, and then you won't feel that way. Next topic.
Right. I mean, women just sometimes just want a comforting listener, like you just want to say, oh, I'm just feeling so bad, blah, blah, blah. But they don't really want you to solve their problem.
And you know what? The listening and the possibility of feeling your feelings and expressing your emotions, even the bad ones up to a certain point until you keep the responsibility to yourself. This is the fuel on what real good relationships work. We need, when we want to be intimate, we need to be able to feel the emotion of the other person. And not to say, oh no, there was nothing, I don't feel angry. Oh, no, I don't feel angry. I'm not angry! So we really need to be connected with our emotions and share the emotions in the partnership. And this creates an incredible intimacy. And men are yearning for this intimacy women do.
Oh my.
So there are ways, even for men, to reach that state in which happy relationships, fulfilling relationships are possible.
Yeah.
Can you maybe share one technique that men can use to, feel more and articulate their feelings?
Actually, I have developed a series of videos all about touching and being touched. And I go into various aspects of touch, and I stress actually in the early parts of that series, actually not so much touching people as allowing things to touch your body, just feeling how the body feels, just noting how it feels inside your clothes, for example, or against the air, whatever your skin is touching. The skin is huge. It's about 1.5 square meters. That's 15 to 20 square feet of feeling surface. And we don't have any structures in the skin for feeling pleasure. We can feel pain, we can feel heat, we can feel cold, we can feel pressure.
And this is what men also feel.
Yeah.
When you
And that's what men know about. They don't know about the actual pleasure of just allowing sensation. So this is one way in. Because once a person can feel, oh my gosh, this is wonderful, just to notice what this sweater feels like, it's really lovely, Men don't do that, But once they can allow it, things start to happen. They start to discover that their body is alive and vital. It's, that thing that they left behind in childhood when they went off to school, It's still there.
Yeah, then from there they can also learn to really notice the feelings and the emotions. When I work with men, it's much more difficult that they are aware of what they really feel. Is it, sadness, or is it anger, or is it whatever? They often cannot really say. And by getting ever more sensitive to oneself, because they are sensitive creatures like everybody, they've only shut down this sensitivity and this. They were not allowed to be emotional except anger, but all the other
Anger was good.
Yeah.
Anger was good, yes.
So reawaken all these senses and the inner feelings, and this will help to everything, I would like to say. It makes you be completely different in the world, not only in relationships, but with yourself. You feel in a different way with yourself, because you begin to feel, while you speak, you can feel your feet, your butt, and everything. You can feel your whole body. It's like you are at home in your body. And this is such a satisfaction in itself. And it's not on women have more easiness in that,
yes.
but because they were always allowed to have emotions. Men were not allowed to have emotions and feelings, so they are a little bit cut off of this, but it doesn't mean that they cannot learn it again.
There was one emotion besides anger that we were allowed.
What was that?
Sexual excitement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All of these feelings, we were so ignorant of them, but they were allowed to be expressed sexually. And all of this energy and concern and concentration and goal-driven activity, got transferred right into the genitals, And of course, that women are very suspicious of men approaching them, because these men are not interested in them. They're interested in feeling something.
And this is the only way they could do it, is by sexuality. And that's what women, at least me, I cannot speak of others, often turned completely off, because I thought I have to be the means for his way of getting into feeling, but I want to have a different setting and so on. And I think this is one of the main problems between men and women in relationship, that men think most that the only way of being in touch is by sexuality, instead of being in touch in another way.
Aww. Yeah, I
wanted
think
to teach so much.
Yeah. Great.
Ah.
So I want to end with one last question that I always ask my guests. So can you tell us how you're both living your splendid lives?
How are we doing it?
Yeah, how? Just describe how is your life so splendid?
We live very much in the now, and take every little thing which can bring pleasure, and allow it to bring us pleasure. Seeing a flower, or we often are still outside, it's still lovely weather, and seeing the leaves falling down and having different colors, all this adds to pleasure, and we can have it together. And when we are in a negative mood, or when there are challenges, we welcome them as a means to grow and to deepen our intimacy, because every challenge we have overcome has deepened our relationship. In other relationships, after 1 year, I knew perfectly that this was not the right thing, sometimes after a month. And here we are together 2 years and something, and it gets better and better. I mean, it was very good before, but you have the beginning, that the feeling that it doesn't end. It's ever deeper, how to say?
More expansive.
Yeah.
There's fewer opportunities to contract and hide away.
And you say expansive. This is true, because we then can inspire other people, even our friends. They like to be with us because, we are not so complicated. We don't, But this joy is transmitting,
That's the word, joy, it's contagious.
Yeah,
and once you flip the switch, you find the joy everywhere.
Yeah, this is how we live our life.
And we're really slow to get out of bed in the morning too.
Oh, that's awesome! I'm so glad to meet you guys. Such a lovely couple, and
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate the opportunity to interview you for, getting the, I guess, revelation about how, creating a wonderful relationship should be like. And I hope to meet you in person someday.
That would be wonderful. Yes.
Let's keep in contact.
Yes, by all
Okay.
means.
And thank you very much for
You're
having this
welcome.
wonderful interview. We really enjoyed it. I did.
I
Did you?
did too.
Okay.
Yeah, really. But we enjoy everything.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.